She is already yours if she lets you touch there. You have probably heard some version of this idea before. Some supposed secret point on a woman's body that works like a hidden switch for desire, a definitive point of no return. But I am here to tell you that there is not the place you are thinking of. It is not a location you can point to on the map of her skin, whether it is her neck, lower back, or inner arm. There is a moment. It is a threshold of intimacy so deep that once you are invited to cross it, the very nature of your connection has fundamentally changed forever. Most men are so busy looking for a physical place that they completely miss this critical, unspoken signal, wasting the opportunity at the exact moment it is being handed to them. This fundamental misinterpretation is the very source of one of the greatest anxieties men face: the paralyzing doubt between whether she is genuinely interested or simply being polite and friendly. It is a silent, high-stakes game of emotional guesswork. You feel it as a tightness in your chest, a hesitation that keeps your hands stuck in your pockets when maybe they should not be, or a surge of misplaced confidence that leads to a clumsy advance and an awkward, cold retreat. This is the silent limbo where attraction goes to die. You hesitate and the moment evaporates into the air, or you misread the signals and she raises an impenetrable wall. And the most dangerous part is that the final signal, the most decisive one, is the one most men read in exactly the wrong way. This fundamentally mistaken interpretation is the source of one of the greatest male anxieties: the paralyzing doubt between her genuine interest and simple cordiality. It is a silent, high-risk game of emotional guesswork. You feel it as a tightness in your chest, a hesitation that freezes your hands, or a misguided confidence that results in a clumsy advance and a cold retreat. This is the limbo where attraction dies. Either you hesitate and the moment evaporates, or you read the signs the wrong way and she builds a wall. The frustration comes from feeling that you are missing a secret language that others seem to understand. You are not imagining it. That language exists, and today we are finally going to translate it for you. My name is Ph.D. Emma Madison, and over the next few minutes we are going to dismantle that wall of uncertainty, brick by brick. This is not about learning a cheap trick. It is about developing your emotional intelligence to a higher level. I am going to give you a framework, a new lens, so that you stop guessing what she wants and start reading what her body is already telling you clearly. And as we begin this journey together, I would love to feel our community a little closer. Tell me in the comments which city or state you are watching from. It is wonderful to see how far this conversation reaches. By the end of this video, you will understand the nonverbal dialogue that leads to there, transforming yourself from an uncertain participant into a man who makes her feel seen and comfortable. To understand this language, the first and most crucial step is to abandon the search for one isolated, definitive gesture. The fundamental mistake most men make is treating touch like a singular event, an on-off switch, when in reality it is only one word within a much longer sentence. As a woman and a behavior specialist, I can tell you that the real message is never in a single touch, but in the pattern it forms. It is the consistency, the rhythm, and the progression that reveal intent. A touch on the arm may be just a touch on the arm, but 3 soft, escalating touches combined with a shift in her posture and sustained eye contact tell a completely different story. My role here is to teach you how to read the entire story, not just the isolated word that leaves you confused. The big turning point happens when you stop asking, "What does this touch mean?" and start asking, "In what context is this touch happening?" The same hand on your shoulder can be a platonic gesture of support on a difficult day, or a clear invitation in a loud bar. The difference is not in the touch itself, but in everything around it: the timing, the pressure, the duration, the repetition, and, above all, the coherence with the other signals she is sending. Her body does not send contradictory signals by accident. When the words say one thing but her body leans closer, or when the smile is polite but her feet point toward the exit, there is a truth being told. Your task, and what I will guide you to do, is to learn how to identify which message is dominant and coherent within that flow of information. This is where we enter more sophisticated territory: ambiguous intent and emotional tests. Very often, the subtlety of a woman's gesture is not a sign of indecision, but an unconscious test of your social intelligence and confidence. A woman may use a light, almost accidental touch to gauge your reaction. Do you pull back with insecurity? Do you move forward in a clumsy and presumptuous way? Or do you respond with calibrated calm, recognizing the signal without needing explicit verbal confirmation? Understanding this is what separates men who seem to have a natural instinct for attraction from those who are always one step behind. They are not magical. They simply understand that female communication often operates in layers, and they know how to read the silent question behind the gesture. To truly understand this language, we need a map. Think of every physical interaction as taking place in 3 distinct territories or zones of intimacy. I call them the social zone, the personal zone, and the intimate zone. Almost every man understands the first zone, many stumble in the second, and nearly all get the third completely wrong, which is where the real magic, the real connection happens. Mastering the transitions between these zones is the most important skill you can develop to eliminate guesswork and build genuine, palpable attraction. It is the difference between fumbling in the dark and navigating confidently along a clear, illuminated path, a path she is helping you create. The social zone is the most straightforward territory. It is the zone of friendly, non-threatening, publicly acceptable touch. Think of a brief touch on her upper arm to get her attention, a high five or a casual tap on the shoulder. These are the touches of basic human connection. They are safe, they establish presence, and they are almost entirely platonic by default. The critical mistake so many men make is either getting stuck in this zone, signaling a complete lack of romantic interest, or trying to jump directly from this zone to the most intimate one, which comes across as awkward, jarring, and socially clueless. The purpose of the social zone is not to build attraction itself, but to open the channel of communication and establish a baseline of physical comfort. It is the first word, not the whole conversation. Now, this is where the dance truly begins. The passage from the social zone to the personal zone is the first and most crucial test of her interest, and it is where most men fail. This transition is subtle, but the information you gain from it is monumental. The personal zone includes areas that imply a greater level of trust and familiarity. Her hands, her lower back, her forearms. But you do not simply leap into this territory. You test the waters. And how she responds to that first small step across the border tells you everything you need to know about whether you should continue. This is the moment that separates the men who get it from those who do not. Because the secret is not in the touch itself, but in the silent permission she gives you to remain there. Let us make this concrete. You are talking, and you lightly touch her hand for a brief moment to emphasize a point. What happens next? Does she pull away, even slightly? Does her hand go stiff? Or does she remain soft and relaxed? Better yet, does she, moments later, find a reason to touch your hand back? This is what we call reciprocity, and it is the gold currency of attraction. A touch that is not reciprocated, whether through her stillness or the absence of a gentle touch in return, is a monologue. A touch that is met with relaxation and reciprocity becomes a dialogue. You need to pay attention to her part of the conversation. Her leaning into your hand as you guide her through a crowd, her hand lingering on your arm after a laugh. These are her ways of saying, yes, continue. This dialogue requires constant calibration. Your job is not to be a bulldozer, advancing regardless of the signals. It is to be a dancer, attuned to your partner's rhythm. If you place your hand at the base of her back and you feel her stiffen, the calibrated man does not just leave his hand there awkwardly or yank it away in panic. He simply removes it smoothly, as though it was only meant to be there for a moment, and transitions back to a less intimate form of interaction without making a fuss. This demonstrates immense social intelligence. It says to her, non-verbally, I see you. I respect your boundaries. I am safe. Paradoxically, gracefully backing off from a failed test often builds more trust and attraction than if the test had never happened at all. But before we move to the most powerful zone of all, we must address the most dangerous trap in the personal zone: confusing politeness with permission. This is a critical distinction. A woman may tolerate your hand on her back because she is non-confrontational, because she is in a public place, or simply because she does not know how to ask you to stop without creating a scene. That is tolerance, not attraction. The sign of tolerance is passivity. Her body is still, her energy does not change, she does not lean toward you. It is a neutral, almost lifeless response. Active participation, on the other hand, is unmistakable. Her body will soften, she will lean into the touch, her breathing may change. She adds energy to the interaction. If you learn only one thing from this video, let it be this. Never confuse a woman's tolerance with an invitation. Once you can clearly distinguish between polite tolerance and active participation in the personal zone, and only then, you are ready to understand the true meaning of there. We are now entering the intimate zone. This is the territory of undeniable connection, the place of vulnerability and deep trust. This zone includes her face, her neck, her hair, and her thighs. A touch in any of these places is a high-stakes move. It is so significant that a misstep here is not just awkward, it can feel like a violation. But when you are invited in, when you cross this threshold with her active permission, the dynamic between you changes irrevocably. This is the point of no return you were looking for. Why is the intimate zone so powerful? Because it is the zone of vulnerability. Touching a woman's face, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, or gently resting a hand on her thigh are actions loaded with symbolic weight. These are areas we instinctively protect. Allowing someone to touch you there is saying, I trust that you will not hurt me. I feel safe with you. I am open to you. That is why a clumsy, uninvited reach toward the face is so repulsive. It ignores the necessary foundation of trust. The touch itself is nothing without the emotional context that precedes it. A man who understands this does not take a touch in the intimate zone, he receives it as a gift. So this brings us to the central secret. There, the one touch that means she is already yours, is not a specific point on her body. It is the first touch within the intimate zone that is not merely tolerated but reciprocated. It is a shared moment of contact where her body actively responds with a yes. It may be her cheek, her neck, her leg. The location is secondary to the interaction. It is when you gently brush her cheek with your knuckles and, instead of pulling away, she leans into your hand, perhaps even closing her eyes for a fraction of a second. That is the moment. That is there. It is a moment of surrender, not conquest. A silent agreement has just been made. You have been granted access to her most personal space, and the game has changed completely. The signs of that active permission in the intimate zone are subtle, but unmistakable to the trained eye. Leaning into the touch is the most obvious. Another is the eye-mouth-eye glance. If, while you are close, you see her eyes dart from your eyes to your mouth and back to your eyes, she is non-verbally communicating a desire for more intimacy, often a kiss. A sudden stillness, a slight parting of the lips, or a soft sigh are all powerful indicators. When you tuck her hair behind her ear and her entire body relaxes into the gesture, she is not merely allowing the touch, she is embracing it. This is not a checklist to be followed mechanically, but a constellation of signals that, when seen together, paint a clear picture of her desire. Let us focus on the two most potent gateways into the intimate zone, her hair and her face. They are powerful because they are directly tied to her identity and femininity. Running your hand through a woman's hair is not a casual gesture. It is deeply personal. The same goes for her face. Gently stroking her jawline or tracing her eyebrow with your thumb is an act of profound intimacy. The test is simple. As you move in to touch her face, perhaps to remove an eyelash, watch her reaction in that microsecond before contact. Does she flinch, even imperceptibly? Or do her eyes soften as she stays still, inviting your touch? Her response in that split second before your skin meets hers tells you everything. Imagine you are on a date, sitting on a couch. You reach out and place your hand on her knee. Scenario A, tolerance. Her leg stiffens. She does not move it away, but the life drains from it. She continues the conversation, but her smile is a little tighter. She is waiting for you to understand the hint and move your hand. This is the prison of politeness. Scenario B, participation. As your hand rests on her knee, her muscle relaxes beneath your touch. She may even place her own hand over yours for a moment, or move her body a little closer to you. Her eyes meet yours, and the energy in her gaze has changed from friendly to intimate. In scenario A, you are an intruder. In scenario B, you are a guest. By now, you should realize that this journey through the zones is not about what you can get from a woman. It is about what she is willing to give you. It is a dance, not a race. Your role is to lead with confidence, but always while listening to her nonverbal feedback, ready to adjust your steps at any moment. The goal is not to conquer the intimate zone. The goal is to become the kind of man who is naturally and willingly invited into it. That understanding is what separates a man who chases women from a man women feel irresistibly drawn to. But recognizing the invitation is only half the battle. The final, most decisive signal is one that most men see, but interpret in exactly the wrong way. And understanding that final signal is the key to sealing the connection permanently. Let's make this intensely practical, moving beyond theory and into the real world where these moments live and breathe. Picture this common scene. You're at a quiet bar, sitting side by side. The conversation is flowing well. You reach for your drink, and in doing so, you let the back of your hand gently brush against hers for a second longer than necessary. This is a classic, low-stakes probe into the personal zone. The untrained man focuses only on his action. The calibrated man, however, is watching for the echo. Does her hand retreat instantly, even a fraction of an inch? Or does it remain soft and unmoving, accepting the warmth? Does she, perhaps a minute later, find a reason to lightly touch your forearm as she laughs? That is the echo. That is her part of the dialogue. It's a quiet acknowledgement that your move was not only accepted but welcomed, and it's an invitation to continue the conversation. Now consider a different scenario. You're walking together and you come to a street you need to cross. You place your hand on the small of her back to guide her across. This is a protective, traditionally masculine gesture that enters the personal zone with a socially acceptable excuse. The critical information, however, comes in the second after the excuse is over. Once you're safely across the street, what happens? The uncalibrated man, high on a misinterpretation of the signal, might just leave his hand there, thinking the gesture itself was the win. This often feels presumptuous. The emotionally intelligent man removes his hand, but he pays sharp attention. Did she subtly lean into his touch as they crossed? Did her body language change and become more open and relaxed after the touch? Did she, in the following moments, position herself slightly closer to him than before? He understands the touch was a question, and her behavior in the aftermath is the answer. Finally, let's explore a more advanced and purely psychological example, the power of non-touch. You're on a great date, the chemistry is palpable, and you're sitting close enough that your knees are almost touching. You have every reason to believe that a touch would be welcomed. But instead of taking it, you hold the space. You focus on intense eye contact, on the conversation, on making her laugh. You let the tension build, creating a magnetic field between you. This is a sophisticated move because you are communicating confidence and self-control. You are non-verbally stating, "I am so sure of this connection that I don't need to rush to physical reassurance. I can simply enjoy being here with you." Paradoxically, your restraint can make her want to be the one to close that gap. This is when you might see her accidentally brush her leg against yours, or find an excuse to touch your hand. She is now investing, moving into the space you so confidently held for her. But here lies the most crucial warning of our entire conversation, the point where your own mind can become your greatest saboteur. A man who is hungry for a yes will begin to hallucinate signals where none exist. He will interpret polite tolerance as restrained desire, a courteous smile as an intimate invitation, and an accidental touch as a deliberate Freudian act. This is the danger of selective reading, where you stop observing reality and begin searching for evidence to support the story you desperately want to believe. Always remember, context is king. A single gesture isolated from a consistent pattern of reciprocity and openness is not a signal, it is just noise. And your ability to tell the difference is what defines your true social intelligence. The opposite mistake, however, is equally destructive. Interpreting the absence of a clear and immediate signal as definitive and irrefutable rejection. Many men confuse a woman's caution with disinterest. Just because she is not escalating touch at the same pace your fantasy would like does not mean the door is closed. Her initial ambiguity may be an unconscious test of your patience, an assessment of your confidence, or simply her natural rhythm. If you panic and retreat at the first sign that she is not throwing herself into your arms, you are communicating that you can only handle obvious signals and that her complexity intimidates you. Sometimes the absence of a clear no is simply a silent invitation for you to prove that you are safe enough for a future yes. And this brings us to the final signal, the most subtle and therefore the most misunderstood of all. It is the dividing line that separates the men who truly understand from those who remain forever in doubt. After you have successfully navigated the zones, after you have received her active participation, and finally make a calibrated move in the intimate zone, perhaps by gently caressing her face, the most powerful signal she can give you is not a sound. It is the opposite. It is a sudden, deep stillness. It is a silent exhale, a momentary closing of the eyes, a relaxation in her shoulders. This is the moment when she lowers the armor. This is the moment of surrender. And this is where almost all men fail. They interpret that sacred silence as awkwardness, as hesitation, and they panic. They fill the space with small talk, breaking the spell. They see a stop sign where she has offered a sanctuary. That stillness is not the absence of a yes. It is its very embodiment. It is her whole being saying to you, without words, I am here with you. I am safe. I am yours. So now you can see it. You can see that the ultimate signal of her surrender isn't a grand, loud gesture, but a profound, trusting quiet. It's the sacred moment her body finally stops asking questions and simply says, without a single word, I'm here with you. I'm safe. Understanding this, truly seeing it for the sanctuary it is a superpower that forever lifts you out of the fog of guesswork. But recognizing this final moment of surrender is only half the victory. Why did she test you so rigorously to get here? What were the invisible questions she needed you to answer before she could grant you that access? That is the other half of the map. It's the key to not just finding this moment by chance, but creating the conditions for it to unfold naturally. That's why you must watch the video on your screen right now called Why She Tests You, the 7 Silent Questions She Needs You to Answer. Don't break this chain of insight. Click on it now because if understanding this moment felt like a revelation, learning how to consistently inspire it will make you feel like you've been handed the keys to a hidden kingdom.